Interlude. The treehouse had been closed since Murtagh and Nasuada left in the morning after their wedding night, more than 2 months before. Eragon could notice the signs of their presence everywhere he looked. It seemed more theirs than hers. He sighed in dissatisfaction. Eragon took the first step into the house and closed the door behind him. He walked to the left on the broad space and reached the kitchen. Instead of Arya's herbs for tea on the table, he found the rest of a strong wine that he knew had come from Nasuada's court. He collected the bottle and the glasses stained of dark red and put it all on the counter. Facing the river through the window, he decided he wouldn't mourn Arya's absence, or he would go mad with wanting. Instead, he opened the windows and felt the fresh morning air blowing from the Edda. He closed his eyes and raised his chin. In the air, he could smell the first signs of rain, that faint smell of wet dirt. He liked it, but not as much as he liked the smell of crushed pine needles. Eragon rolled his sleeves and got to work. The Anga Games had ended in the month before. Without any surprise, Roran reached the finals in wrestling, and without any surprise, he lost. He accepted the defeat as an honorable man like him would. He congratulated the elf who beat him and thanked him for the amazing fight, the best Anga had ever seen. Nasuada even said it was the best the games had ever seen in all its editions, and that Roran only lost because the elves were very difficult to beat. Impossible even, only a rider could win against one of them. It was her saying, but Eragon agreed. That's why he discouraged anyone who wished to sign up for wrestling in the general category. It was stupid and reckless. Deucen winning in sword fighting was no surprise either, in both categories. Without Rhaenyra and Avelina to stop him, it was easy for him to put all the other competitors to shame. Surprising was how little he did to investigate Eragon's life during his stay in Anga. Eragon even asked Helena about it, and she said that he had lost interest after Arya left. Apparently, Durin wasn't a dedicated investigator or an attentive one. The first rule of watching a target, staying sober. He failed that immediately. One day, Eragon approached Rilvan to ask him about the type of behavior displayed by Deucen and so unique among his kind. He simply shrugged and said that elves could be whatever they wished to be, and if Deucen wanted to be a drunk and a libertine, it was his right to be one. It was odd, he emphasized, but no one would question him about it. The twitch on his upper lip showed that Rilvan did not agree with Deucen's choices in life, so Eragon left it at that. Murtagh and Nasuada kept their marriage a secret for the rest of their stay in Anga and their trip back to the kingdom. On the first day after their arrival, however, they reunited her court and announced their union, such as the arrival of their future child. It was a shock to all, but if they were against it, no one said a word. They smiled and clapped. There was even a toast. Or that was the recount made by Murtagh via scrying. Eragon couldn't shake the uneasiness off his stomach. Something bad was bound to happen. And it did. When he arrived in Serda, King Orin heard from his advisors about the new marital status of the Queen of the Brodding Kingdom, as she wasn't hiding. Tale told that he was enraged, and that was what the sailors told Eragon in the tavern one night as well. I'm telling you, sir. Queen Manuela's handmaids told me personally just before I travelled here, one of them said, that the king was so furious they kept him in the dark that he threatened to start a war. He questioned the secrecy. It was the queen who made him see the reason again. When did he saw the reason? Eragon confided to Saphira, who was flying nearby, scouting for food. He is not a madman, Eragon. He is a good strategist and general. Fair, he agreed grudgingly. What else is new in the West, my friend? He asked the man. Well, the king didn't start a war, but he's provoking one. He moved the borders again. Word says that Queen Nasuada is already moving her armies south. Eragon shook his head as he swept the kitchen floor. He could never understand the need to rule over more and more land. He found it extremely difficult to manage just a small territory. He imagined how it would be to rule over a whole country like the kingdom. That's because you don't rule and they don't manage. Managing is harder than ruling. Saphira was lying in her shelter to wait for the rain. She wished to take the opportunity to train for more difficult flights, such as the one to the dragon lair. As soon as the first drops fell, she would take the skies. For now, she watched the skies. You know, I have been thinking about a governor for Anga. I know what you think, Eragon. Now try to see what I am thinking. He laughed, but did what she said. It didn't take much effort. No, Saphira. I don't want it. Why not? As I said, you do the hardest part. Why not be the ruler of your country? Anga is not a country, is a dragon hold, and it doesn't respond to any ruler. I'm a manager, yes, and I lead the order, but I do not intend to call myself a ruler. So who do you think could be this governor you talked about? And what's the difference between that and a ruler? The governor will manage. This person will take my place as an administrator. I will have more time to focus on the riders and their training. Besides, I do not wish to claim this land a separate land from Alagaezia. Saphira kept silent for a while, and Eragon thought she had dropped the subject. It may be a good decision. We will discuss it further in the future. He smiled as he moved to the living room, still sweeping. Eragon had been considering this matter for a while. He wanted more time to properly train the riders, even to mentor the oldest ones, to guide them. It was a common affair to interrupt a lesson for a problem in supply distribution. It annoyed him that after more than 20 years he was still working on bureaucracy. He also wished to dedicate more on watching the land along with Saphira and the Eldenari. The scouting had proven crucial just a few days before when he watched Elva keep up with their plan. Jusen had left for Elismera on the same day as the rest of the guests. Eragon would reunite with the Saphira every day at dawn and dusk to track his progress. He would reach for his magic inside and say the words that would allow him to access the tracking spell on the letter the elf carried. It was a slow trip, so Eragon and Elva had all the time they needed to prepare. On the eve of Jusen's arrival at Elismera, Eragon asked the Eldenari for their help, even knowing he would have a hard time convincing them to do so. He wanted them to lend him and Saphira their energy, so she could expand her mind and watch Elva's moves and possibly guide her from afar. The dragons argued that they were acting in self-benefit, and because of that, they would have to refuse to help the rider and his dragon. With their refusal, the pair would have to act all by themselves. It was fair. Painful, but fair. Eragon and Saphira flew for miles and miles for half a day, as close as they could to Alagaezia, so Saphira's reach would be increased, but not far to the point where they wouldn't be able to return in time if something happened at the hold. They settled on a plain with lots of trees and hid under a big one. There they ate until their bellies were full and their energy was restored. They waited until the time was right. Gathering all the energy she could, Saphira expanded her mind as far as possible, farther than she had ever gotten, and soon they saw themselves transported to the forests of Du Weldenvarden. More precisely, the eastern limits of Elismera, where Jusen had set camping, waiting for his contact to arrive. They sat on the grass far from the elven realm, as Elva threaded the forest with caution, observing, hiding. It was midnight, when Elva's violet eyes started to capture the first signs of movement between the trees. Eragon wished that he could communicate with her, and as soon as he had that thought, the sound of cracking twigs made him alert. They didn't have much time, as Saphira was already exhausting her strength just to take them that far, so communicating with Elva was out of the question. How Eragon wished the scrying laws in Du Weldenvarden had become more flexible by then. It would be much easier if they could just watch Elva through the mirror, but then we wouldn't see who Jusen's hirer is, for we don't know this person. He could not argue with Saphira with that. She was completely right. Unless they did know him, in that case, scrying would be perfect. They watched as Elva, light as a cat, followed the sound. She couldn't get too close or they would sense her presence, but Eragon knew she was close enough to sense their presence, which was more dangerous to them than to her. Saphira moved their perception close to Deucen, so Eragon saw as the elf greeted the newcomer, a tall person wearing white clothes under a dark cloak. "You are Deucen, right? I expect the trip has been fruitful." A masculine elven voice chanted the words in the ancient language and sounded soft in the night. Deucen nodded and gave him the letter that worked as a contract. "Get everything you need. Eragon." "Fast, I can't hold for much longer," Saphira said, and the image wavered in his head. Quickly he reached for the ring his father gave to him, Aaron. Saphira's effort to keep the mind expansion was fueled with more energy, allowing them to have a few more minutes of it. "Trophies, gold, good ale," Deucen said in a smug voice. "You can say it was fruitful. That is great, child. But I was referring to our agreement. I believe the instructions passed to you by my vassal were clear. Vassal. He must be a lord. Silence. Eragon. Let's hear them." Deucen seemed relaxed, as he had the world at his feet. The Shadeslayer, well, both of them are discreet. The man approached Deucen, and Eragon thought he looked feral. He didn't know him, now he was sure. Discreet. That's not what we have heard. In fact, rumor says they are rather careless when they think no one is watching. "Were you watching, Deucen?" Deucen shrugged, and Eragon marveled at his ability to look less like an elf and more like a human teenager, more and more. "I would be lying if I said I saw them interacting the way you would think they would. They really were discreet. What else can I say?" The man sighed. "Fine. What else?" "The order, the riders. Tell me everything you know." Deucen looked up as he was trying to remember. "The head rider has a right hand, Rainier. That we already know." "Right." Deucen cleared his throat. "I don't know how important it is, but the entire order left the games earlier, following our queen. You don't know how important it is. Let me tell you, it is important. It's the kind of thing you rush to tell us." Deucen didn't seem fazed by the dark tone used by the other. Instead, he seemed satisfied with his contribution. "Great. So now you know." A somber laugh escaped the man's throat. "Yes, we do. As we knew yesterday, and the day before, and weeks ago when they arrived at Elismera. You're late, boy. And now I won't pay you. No. You have to pay me. You failed your mission. You brought nothing but old news. You didn't even have evidence of the Queen's proximity with the Shadeslayer, which was the easiest task you had. I will keep my coins." The man turned to leave, just when the image wavered again as the surface of a lake. "Not now, Saphira." "Hold on, I can't. Unless you can give me more energy, I can't hold any longer." Eragon reached for Aaron once more and gave her an enormous amount of energy without emptying it all. It was a lot of energy, all he had stored in 20 years, but Saphira was still inexperienced in that kind of mental practice. It took her too much of her strength to keep the image alive. "Is it enough?" He felt her body shake a little behind his back. "For a little longer, yes." Deucen followed the man for a few steps, still trying to reason with him. Eragon couldn't see Elva, but knew she was lurking in the darkness. And that was what saved Deucen's life. "Wait," he said, grabbing the other's arm, who turned with a fiery look. "You have to pay at least the costs of the trip. It's not cheap to come and go. You just said you received gold for winning the tournament. It seems to me that you would go east either way, hired or not." Elva started moving. Eragon could see her silhouette approaching the pair, but the men were too absorbed in their conversation that they didn't see her coming. "What is she thinking?" Eragon asked nervously. Maybe she sensed danger. Deucen grabbed the hilt of his sword and unsheathed it. "You pay me now, or I will have to end you." The man raised his palms. "Calm down, child." 2 steps brought Deucen closer to the man. "Calm. You are deceiving me. Pay me what you owe me." Now, the tip of Deucen's sword went to meet the other man's chin. Very slowly, the man reached for his pouch. His hand was trembling with fear. He detached the pouch from his belt and let it drop in Deucen's open hand. "May I go now?" he asked, still in fear. Eragon would like the situation to be solved right there, but he didn't know those people. He didn't know what they were capable of. If he thought Deucen would take the gold and leave in peace, he should be called an optimist. In fact, he could. The man held the pouch back as Deucen made to retract his hand. With one hand, the man grabbed the pouch. With the other, he reached for a dagger attached to the back of his belt and motioned to strike Deucen in the chest. What stopped him from doing so was Elva's quick hand that grabbed his elbow. The image faltered, and Eragon noticed Saphira was trembling uncontrollably now. And then it faded. "No. We need to know what happened next." "I'm sorry, little one, but I couldn't hold it anymore." He sighed and got up to face her. There was more energy in Aaron, but he didn't want to sacrifice it. "It's all right, Saphira. You did well. Wonderfully, actually." He patted on her jaw. "I'm proud of you." Saphira hummed to his compliments. "But we need to keep working on our minds. It should be easier in the future." Eragon frowned just to remember the encounter he witnessed through Saphira's mind. He put the broom aside and went to look at the fireplace. The faith he made of Arya's family was nowhere to be seen, such as the other one, so he searched for it inside the desk drawers. It was there, where Nasuada's servants had put it. He retrieved it and got it back to their right place. "You know what I just remembered?" Saphira started. "Vance gave you a gem filled with energy. We could have used it." Eragon sat on the couch and kept looking at the two images, Islan Zadi and Evandar with baby Arya, and Arya and Saphira in the sunrise. Yes, they had forgotten about it at that moment. He would forget about it all the time, and it still surprised him how much energy was stored in the emerald. Let it rest. It doesn't matter now. He stared at the two pictures and realized it was lacking. Something is missing. Saphira laughed. "You, maybe." "Fernan, most certainly. I think you're right. But I will let her take care of that if she wishes." Wise. Eragon leaned his head back, thinking of how life would be from that moment. A lot was happening for him, but at the same time, there was so little he could do about it. Elva had made a powerful enemy when she revealed herself and saved Deucen. And with that, she would have to deal by herself. Arya was training the riders in speechless magic and magical combat. He wished to go to them and help but couldn't. Nasuada and Orin were in the brink of war, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Eragon was dwelling on those matters and remembered how his two plans had come together surprisingly well. After the games, Oswald sailed back to Alagaezia, carrying the guests back home. He stopped at Serda, then went home to Tem. Normally, the merchant would have a few weeks to rest before getting back to work, but this time he had a mission. He got back on the sea until he reached the Bear Mountains. His boat was loaded onto the back of a dwarf wagon and pulled in the direction of Farthendua, where he would put his boat back in the water and sail north, following the Ragni River toward Hedarth, where he would take the Edda River and travel to Ceres. There, he informed the elves that he had a special delivery to Lord Deathda from Mount Arnger. The entire travel took 5 weeks. Oswald sailed and walked fast. Faster than any merchant would. He must have been exhausted by the end. As Eragon watched when following Oswald via scrying, the guards, who he couldn't see, tried to take the letter from Oswald, but he stressed the fact that he was supposed to deliver it himself. They weren't as insistent as Eragon expected, so it was his first win. Deathda telling Arya about the letter was the second. He supposed, after the altercation between Elva and the mysterious man in Elismera, it passed 2 days until she contacted him. Arya had allowed her to use the mirror in her office, and they both were there when Elva told him about the encounter. She detailed the interaction, saying that the man who hired Deucen was a lord, a member of Arya's council. Lord Falale, Arya said. Eragon narrowed his eyes, trying to remember him. He was sure before they hadn't met in his time in Elismera. Now his name didn't sound too strange. Do I know him? Possibly. But not deeply. Not too memorable, I guess, he shrugged. What else? Did you have the chance to confront him that night? He asked, looking at Elva. I confronted him. An evil smile appeared on her face. What did you do, Elva? She laughed. Don't worry, he's well. At least until his next attempt of a coup. Eragon looked from Elva to Arya. He was speechless. Maybe involving her in the plan had not been the best idea he could have had. Continue. After I stopped him from killing Jewson, he demanded to know what I was doing there, but Jewson and I scared him away. Jewson kept the gold, though. Offered to share it with me. He is a good individual after all, Elva said, with a monotonous voice. But before he ran away, I recognized his face from the council meetings. What's next? He is missing, Arya said. No one has seen him since. He is afraid of you. He knows you and Elva are close, and if she recognized him, he might have recognized her as well. Arya nodded. She looked tired, and he felt bad for her. Once again, he wished he could do something he couldn't. He wanted to be there for her, lend her a shoulder to help carry her load. He wanted to go after that lord, just to make it clear that the queen is not defenseless. I know, she said. That's why I've sent some of my guards after him. It would be an omission to know about his faults and still let him walk free. He's a criminal, he stated. She sighed and nodded again. How about Jewson? Arya looked away. He's home, where I demanded him to stay until it all is sorted out. And he agreed with that. She gave him a joyless smile. It was either that or punishment for conspiring with a criminal. Besides, I wasn't asking. Jewson had gone home to his family. He and his sister, Alanna, were expected to touch the dragon egg very soon, being them still young in the elven standards. Eragon prayed to the gods, if they existed, that Jewson would not become a rider. It could be a good thing. It may be good for him. What do you mean? He got up and picked up the broom again. He may find a reason to give up the life of a mercenary. I doubt it. He cares too much about gold. I said it may be good, not that it will be good. Let's wait and see. Well, yes, apparently that's all I have left to do. Don't be so bitter. And you're missing a spot by the bookcase. He shook his head and went to sweep the place she had pointed out. The best thing about it all was how Arya had been feeling relieved that her closest advisor had shown her loyalty. Deathda ignored Eragon's request to help him tame a rebellious Arya and confided in his queen, instead of going behind her back. He told her about the letter and offered her a piece of advice, that she would keep working hard on her beliefs, that even the Order would see how capable and strong she was. The head rider would come to his senses. It was a bit of advice full of flatteries, made to win her heart. She didn't say it, but he knew by the way she spoke that Deathda wished to be closer to her. Nevertheless, she had counted it as a victory, so he did as well. There still was the possibility that his loyalty would serve as a cover for his plotting. That was what scared Eragon the most, that he was looking but not seeing. By the time he had finished cleaning the whole house, the rain was pouring outside, lightning striking and thunders rolling loud in the sky that had turned day into night with dark clouds. A familiar sound coming from the door made him drop the dirty sheets he had removed from the mattress and go down the stairs. He opened the door and found the old couple of cats waiting for him to welcome them home. They were soaked, so Eragon ran back up to find a clean towel. The three of them sat on the living room floor, where Eragon tried to keep the little creatures dry and warm. The male cat was showing the first signs that he wouldn't last much longer, with a droopy pair of eyes and a limper leg. It made Eragon feel sad. He always knew this moment would come for his loyal friends, but it hurt anyway. He felt like the child he once was in Carver Hall, suffering for his dying dog. The animal was too slim, like Eragon, but he was healthy until he wasn't anymore. It showed the boy, at a very young age, that life is frail, and it all can change in an instant. The cats snuggled up to him, and they all stayed like that to wait for the rain to stop. The next day, it was going to be different, and life would go on.